We might not know their needs. We might not know their frustrations. So what user research does is we talk to people and ask people what their frustrations are, ask people what's their unmet needs. And when we collect all these frustrations and feedback, we inform the product team what to build and how to build. I know this doesn't make sense, so I will run this presentation with an example. This is a very well documented process that user research played a key role in. So in 2001, this guy, Steve Jobs, launched the iPod. I know many of you have not used or don't know what the iPod is or not seen. So the iPod is that small device that he's holding. And what it did is an MP3 record player. And this was a revolutionary at that time, 2001, because before that, people used to carry these huge CD players, and they were so bulky, and CDs could only store like 15 to 20 songs. iPod changed that, and iPod now was sleek, was well designed, and it could hold like 1,000 songs. I know today with Spotify and Apple Music and such, we have access to millions of songs, but it actually started with the iPod. So how it worked is people download the MP3 songs and then they upload it to the iPod and then they carry the AirPod around. Think of it as your phone without the capability of calling or accessing apps. All it does is music. Or think of it like Spotify. If Spotify was to launch a gadget, all it did is play music. That is what iPod was. But as much as iPod was a fantastic product, there was this piracy website called Napster. And what Napster did is it uploaded music on this website and people downloaded music for free. So practically illegally acquiring music. And this affected the revenues of recording companies, and artists were not getting paid or they were not getting enough money because people are pirating their music. And when iPod launched, it even made it easy for people to listen to music. So all you have to do is download from Napster, which is an illegal website, download it into your computer and transfer it from your computer into your iPod and carry the music all around. And this really affected the revenues, affected the artists. So what they did is all these recording companies went to Apple, which was the one manufacturing iPods, and told Apple, hey, we need you to stop playing music that is not legally bought. So can you put kind of a software that if it detects that this music was downloaded from Napster or such website, it will not play in the iPod. But Steve Jobs and Apple had one question. Why are people downloading music from Napster? Why are they not buying? What is it that Napster is offering to people that they prefer to illegally download music rather than purchasing music? And Apple and Steve Jobs told these people, told the recording companies, go and do your research. Go and find out, why is this a problem? Why are people downloading this music illegally? What is it that you're not doing? What's so appealing about Napster that people would prefer to go and pirate music rather than buying music? So all this is the problem, right? And when we come back to the definition of UX research, is to understand unmet needs and frustrations. And I'll be using that case study when we are going through. So what Steve Jobs told the recording companies is, go and find out and understand these unmet needs and frustrations. And once you do that, then you will inform our product direction. We will inform, do we really want to have this software that if music is pirated, it doesn't play on the iPod, but if music is bought, it's played on the iPod. So this is the importance of UX research. So the recording company they went outside and sourced for a research company who performed user experience research to understand what is it about Napster that is so appealing to people. And whenever you are contracted, or user research generally follows these steps. So first is to understand the problem, then you recruit the participants, then you talk to people, then you analyze the data you have collected, and then you share the result. So I'll go through them step by step. So starting with understanding the problem, here is what's your hypothesis, what's your assumption, what do you want to clarify with the users? And the problem needs to be well articulated so that, and when it's well articulated, it can be a problem, it can be a hypothesis, it can be an assumption. It helps driving a decision. You need clarity from people who will eventually use the product. And this is to clarify, does this problem exist in the world or it exists in your head, right? And in our case, the problem here is understanding why people are pirating music rather than buying. You might have all the hypotheses and assumptions why that is done, but you actually need to talk to people, to talk to your actual customer or people who are affected to understand why are they pirating. And the second thing, in our case, in the Napster case, is what can we do to ensure people are buying our music and that reduces our losses. So yeah, understanding the problem is really important. And it can be an hypothesis, can be an assumptions, but that is the first step of user experience research process. Then the second is recruiting participants. Rule of thumb, please don't recruit your friends and family because they are biased and they don't want to see you heartbroken, so they give you false data. Interview people who are facing the problem and they really don't know you. So when you're talking to the right people, you get the right answer or you get accurate data. That's what we say. And in our case, the recording companies recruited people who are young, people who are tech savvy, and people who have iPods. And the reason is it's this group of people that pirate music so much rather than an odd person who listens to music on radio. There's no need to interview them. There's no need to recruit them because they are not your core customers, or people who don't know what the iPod is, or people who are not tech savvy and they don't know what Napster is. There's no need to talk to them because they can't provide, they can't provide good information. So when you're recruiting users for your research process, you have to be very specific and you narrow down to who do you want to talk to that has a direct impact to the problem. And in our case, it was people who are young, people who are tech savvy. In 2001 is when the internet was getting in. It wasn't as widespread as it is now. And most importantly, people who owned iPods. So that was the participant for the study. And then probing, which is talking to participants. So you can use the qualitative part or you can use quantitative. So qualitative is understanding why. And in our case, can be questions as, why are you not buying albums? Why is Napster great? What is the problem with albums? What can we do to enable you to stop pirating and start buying music? So you are talking to people and having a conversation, like a one-on-one, face-to-face conversation. And qualitative research, it's essentially understanding the why. It's more conversational. But there's also quantitative data. So if you need information from a large group of people, so you send out something like surveys to 1,000 people, 100 people, so that you can understand what is the sentiment in a large group or a large pool of people. So in our case, when the recording companies, what they did is they looked at the quantitative data, and this is sales, digital player sales, especially the iPods. They looked into Napster usage. So that gives you numbers. And then they did qualitative research methods where you talk to people face to face. Remember, you have recruited participants, so you know exactly who you want to talk to. And you ask them about Napster, why they don't buy albums. You just probe them, why would you pirate rather than buy? So you just talk to them. And then after collecting all this information, you do data analysis. So you look at what users said in the surveys versus what users told you face to face. You look at patterns. You look at what are key themes that are coming up, and what are areas of improvement. And then when you do that, you share this, you prepare a report, right? And this report says, hey, here's the problem, and here is the solution, or here are the questions you have, and here are the answers. So in our case, the recording companies analyzed the survey reports and the user interview notes, and then the report that they did will touch why people are attracted to Napster and they don't opposed to downloading or buying music, and what service improvements that they should make. So the report, whenever you are writing a report, make sure you really addressing what the problem was. So the data analyst and reporting is closely tied with what was the problem. And then, yeah, and then you share results, and then you share the next steps. So, you share your results with the key stakeholders, and you make sure you indicate the next steps and have a plan. How do we solve this problem? The thing that I usually say, whenever you share a report from users, we have talked to users and you share a report, and there's no action that has been taken, that research is not good. That research is not going to create an impact. Research that creates an impact is the one that you share the results and you share the next steps, because you are telling people, here's the problem and here's how we can solve the problem. So the results from all this research, the recording companies, they came back to Apple with the results. So I'm quite sure, I'm not, okay, this is not one-on-one, but I really wanted to ask what you thought the key thing was, why people would rather pirate music rather than buying music. What do you think was the problem? I'm not sure if we have access to chat. I really want to see what people thought the problem was. Do you have access to chat?
Yeah, they have access to chat. You can just let me have a look at it and see.
So the question again is, why do you think people would rather pirate rather than buy music?
Someone is saying price, another one cost, and yeah, free. Yeah, free maybe definitely reduce the cost. Yeah.
Yeah.
So most of them it is the price, cost, and that the pirating is free, mostly free. Accessing the audio is free. Probably the cost and limitation of the variety of music from Apple, custom playlists, cost versus free. People have free things, people only pay for things they have emotional attachment to. Music was freely available anyway. They got variety of music for free. Yeah, control over how they listen to their music, availability and free variety.
Okay.
File
So I can
format,
see like free is the key thing. Okay. So after doing user research process, so this was the reason that came up. One, back then you had to buy an album. You can't buy a song. And if you liked 2 songs in an album that had 8 or 10 or 15 songs, you can't go to the shop and say, give me 2 songs. No, you buy the whole album, you skip, and you only listen to the 2 songs that you like. And users didn't want that. Users say, why am I buying 15 songs that I don't like just to listen to 2 songs? That really doesn't make sense. And they did not want that, right? The second one is, yeah, Napster is free. But yes, free is a value proposition. But the reason why they went to Napster, the key thing was because you can't buy a single song. The recording labels did not offer an avenue where you can only buy 1 song from the album. But Napster allowed you to download 1 song or 2 songs that you like without really downloading the entire album. And then the third thing is people did not want to buy CDs, and people wanted iPods. iPods were well designed, iPods were flexible. So as much as people are saying Napster is free, and this is what user research comes and verify, as much as accurate, the reason why people went to Napster, the main reason was because they couldn't buy a single song. Yes, free is a good price point, but the underlying key point was because you can't buy a single song. And this is the importance of user experience research. And what they found out is people are willing to pay as long as they can pay to what they wanted, rather than buying a whole album that had songs that they really didn't like. So this was presented to Apple and it was presented to recording labels. So another question, if you are Steve Jobs, what would you do? What would be your solution, given that you are told users didn't want to buy an album just to listen to 2 songs? Users didn't have an avenue to buy a single song, and people are moving away from CDs to MP3 players. So if you are the CEO of Apple, what would you do? What would be your solution? Yeah, so type it on the chat. Whoever was reading the chat, thank you. But I can't see the chat. I can't access the chat from here.
Okay, yeah. I guess it is because you are sharing the screen. That's why, yeah.
You can read it out to me.
Some are saying that is allow users ability to download and buy a single song, charge at $1 per song and make in tunes. Charge per song, enable people to buy a single song. Yeah, those are the replies that are already on the chat. Yeah, most of them are it's about having it to charge per song.
Exactly.
Give the users the ability to get the song they want. Allow the users to build an album, then buy that album as a whole. I would develop a system through which they will buy rather than buying the CD. Remove friction between the user needs and the final offer.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I can see like it was around buying a song, and Apple launched what we call iTunes, and iTunes enabled people for $1, you can buy a song and you keep it forever, and then you are not obliged to buy an album. And then the music you download, because you legally got it, you bought the song, you own the song, you can play with other media players. So these are the solution that Apple and Steve Jobs came up with. But as much as we are saying that, not everyone. No, before I go that. So when we look between the UX research findings and the solution, right? You can see the correlation of how UX research is important, because UX finding found out that people wanted to buy a song, not an album. And what iTunes did, they let people pay $1 for a song and keep it. People couldn't buy a single song. And then the solution was you're not obliged to buy an album. And people are moving from CDs to MP3. And the solution was music will work with other players. And this is the importance of user experience research. Because if research was not done, there's a high likelihood. No, I have confidence. There's extreme likelihood that this solution would not relate to people's needs. There's high likelihood that people would design, or Apple will design a solution based on their assumptions. But the fact that they went and asked users, why is it about that you'd rather pirate rather than buy a song? These are the research findings, and you can see how research findings enables a solution. So this is something that you should understand about user experience research. It helps businesses to understand users' problems and come up with solutions that creates impact. That's the core of user experience research. It's helping the business or a non-profit, like to understand what's going on in the ground, what's the user's problems. And it's also using helping business to understand, verify the assumptions they have, prove or disprove the hypothesis that they have. And the reason we do use experience research is to come up with solutions that creates impact. However, as much as iTunes was good, not everyone really wanted this solution. Not everyone was happy with this solution. Um, can somebody guess or write on the chat why? Who do you think did not like this solution and why they didn't like this solution?
Someone is saying an Napster, another one is saying anyone who does not have an Apple computer. The one says, yeah, they still charged for the songs. The other one says the artist. The other one, the music companies, since the albums didn't sell anymore. The one saying the music labels. The other one saying it was taking them out of business. And because Napster was still offering free music, the other one says, yeah, it was limited to Apple devices. The other one says the music labels. Another one, yeah, those with no Apple product. The other one says, yeah, they didn't care about keeping the song, so it was still costly.
Yeah. Some is true. Yeah. So people did not like this. One is the artists. And the reason is artists didn't like their albums to be dismantled. Whenever you listen to an interview with an artist and they are asked about an album, they usually have a theme around an album, and each song is kind of relating to the theme. Even the way the songs are organized, they want to send a message. It's more like if you have a book, each chapter says something and you cannot remove one chapter. So if you remove one chapter, the whole book loses the sequence or the story is lost. But artists didn't want this because they dedicate a lot of time into creating an album. And they could not fathom the idea that somebody will take their album and just dismantle it and people could get single songs. So they didn't want that. They still stuck with their old ways. Another one is the recording labels, because as much as Apple was charging $1 for a song, they were taking, I think it was 30% or 25% of that dollar as a way of maintaining iTunes. But recording labels are like, we want to keep the full share of our money. we don't want to share our revenue with someone else. And this is the thing about user experience research that I want to tell you about, is there'll be pushbacks from stakeholders, especially if you have disruptive ideas, but you need to stand your ground and defend your research findings. And when this pushback came, Steve Jobs said, look, research is very clear. What people are doing is very, very clear. One, if you are an artist and you want to sell an album, people don't want to buy your entire album and they want 2 songs from it. Research showed that, right? And if you are recording companies, you'd rather share 25% with us than not getting any money at all. And the justification for that was research. We talked to people and people said the reason we pirate is because we can't buy a single song. But if you have access to buy a single song, we will buy it to support the artists. And Steve Jobs stood his ground. And the music industry, 3 years down the line, even before, in less than 3 years, iTunes had 1 billion downloads of songs, and the recording companies and artists in equal measure made a lot of money. All of a sudden, that 75% that they were getting was translating to millions and millions of dollars. Rather than losing all to Napster and losing it to pirating agencies. So I want to tell you, you will come back with fantastic results and good ideas, but you will get pushback. It will happen, especially if iTunes was so new and people don't understand your idea, you'll get pushback. but stand your ground because you have facts. Okay, you have research findings. You know what users really want on the ground. And this is the importance of doing user research, because you can defend your findings, or you can defend your decisions using user findings. But Apple didn't stop there. So this is how the iPod looked like. And what Apple realized at the time was people were very picky with their music, meaning they only downloaded songs or bought songs that they liked. So that screen at the top and the buttons at the bottom, people didn't use them as much. And Apple was like, wait a minute, why are we having this big device, this nice screen, and these buttons if users are not using it? Users were not skipping songs. Users could just launch the iPod, get into the music, and then shuffle the music, because every music that they have in their iPod, they loved it. So there was no need to skip music all the time. And what Apple did is they redesigned the iPod into this tiny thing called iPod Shuffle. As you can see, there's a huge difference. So they removed the screens but still maintained the buttons. And it was so thin, compact, and light that you could carry it anywhere, and users loved it. And there was no need for a screen, because whatever songs that are contained in this iPod Shuffle are songs that you really loved. It's kind of your favorite playlist on Spotify. You rarely skip a song. Whenever you don't know what you listen to, you go to your favorite playlist, play a song, and you jump to the song all around. And this is a way of telling you that UX research does not stop. People behaviors change and technologies evolve, and products need to keep up with the changes. And it's really important. So there are times where maybe when the iPod was launched and Apple could sit back and say, hey, we have launched it, that's it. But understand, we are living in a industry right now, in the world right now, where things change a lot. New technologies keep coming up over and over again. New iPhones come out. You cannot compare Windows 8 to Windows 11, Windows 10 or 11, Windows 11 right now, right? You cannot compare back in the day how Instagram looked in 2015 versus how it looks now. It keeps changing. And the reason why this continuous change is because user research is done over and over again. People, however they acted in 2020 during the pandemic, is not how they acted 2022 after the pandemic is done. The behaviors has changed. And this is why user research needs to be continuous, keeping the finger on the pulse, like what's going on. So we have talked a lot. So in summary, I'll say this. One, user research is about understanding people's unmet needs, frustrations, and behaviors to inform product direction. It's about the people you're designing for. So if you have an idea, if you're working on an idea, make sure you talk to people who will use this product, so that you can tune your product to solve their problems. We have seen the iPod, how it changed music, how people listened, and how people purchased music entirely. It's because they understood what the user problem was. Second, I understand these steps of doing user research. So first, you understand the problem or the assumption you have or the hypothesis you have. Then you recruit participants. Avoid people you know. Recruit participants who are directly impacted with your solutions, who you are designing for, or participants who are facing the problem. Then third, you talk to them using various methods. It can be quantitative if you want a large sample, or qualitative if you need a small sample, or quantitative if you want to understand the trends, and qualitative you want to understand the why people are behaving a certain way. And then you do your data analysis. With surveys, it's very easy. You look at numbers. With qualitative data, or whenever you talk to people, you look at what are people saying over and over again, what are the themes that are coming out, and then you share, and then you share with your stakeholders and have the next steps in which you are, how will you solve the problem, given you understand the problem really well. And then UX research should inform product direction. So whenever you have an idea, make sure you talk to people first, right? Understand the problem really deeply before providing solutions. I know most of us are so excited about the problem that you go to solutions. That's not the right way of going. First, you start by understanding the problem deeply. And then whatever solutions you're coming up with, it actually addresses the problem. And this is what Apple did with iPod. So I encourage you, in whenever you have an idea, if it's a startup or maybe a company you're working for, before you start coming up with solutions, talk to people who will be directly impacted by your solution or people who are facing the problem to deeply understand the problem. And then from understanding the problem, you're coming up with solutions. At the end of the day, the solutions we are coming up with should solve a problem, and it should solve a user problem. And when we solve users' problem really well, people are willing to pay for it. You have seen how iTunes solved that problem really well. And actually, Napster went down because people are like, I can support my artist. The problem was not I cannot afford a song, it's I could not afford an album, right? So, and people are willing to pay for solutions that solve our problems really well. Yeah, so thank you so much. I hope you have learned something new. I hope you have interest in UX research. I encourage you to do so. Yeah, so I'm open for questions and comments. So thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kennedy, for such a wonderful presentation. It was so awesome learning how everything about user experience, doing the user research, understanding the problem, and before coming up with a solution. So there's someone who has asked in the chat, what is Microsoft Leap?
Sorry, what's that? I didn't get that.
Someone, what is Microsoft Leap, the Leap program?
I don't think I can offer comprehensive answer. I don't think I'm part of that
Maybe
team.
if Erin is still in the call, can tackle that more. Okay, we wait for that. There is another question. Yeah, someone here asked, could you share some of the effective ways of analyzing qualitative data?
Yeah, that's a good one. So in qualitative data, we use something called affinity diagram. Yeah. So this is where whenever you talk to people and you have recruited the right people, you will find out there are some things people will repeat over and over. So the first participant, maybe to the eighth participant, there's something that they are saying that is coming up over and over again. And what we do is you write that down and you give it a title. So for example, in the example I've given you with recording companies asking why people pirate rather than buy music, you'll find a lot of people saying, I don't want to buy an album. And maybe you've talked to 8 people, and this thing of I don't want to buy an album is coming up. The first participant to the 8th participant mentioned that they don't want to buy an album. So you take that feedback and then you label it. People don't want to buy an album. And then you have those user quotes below them. So when you're writing your insights on, you're informing the team, you say, hey, I talked to 8 people, and these 8 people talked passionately about. They don't want to buy an album to listen to two songs. And I think this is a problem. So in qualitative data, you will find there are themes that will come up over and over again. And those are like the core themes. And then there are things that are coming up that really addresses the business on how to solve a solution, how to solve a problem. What I've found out is the best solutions actually come from customers because they explain in detail what they are going through. And then they come up with, this is what I'd like to happen to solve this problem. Um, so yeah, so when it comes to qualitative data, read through your notes, re-listen to your interviews again if you recorded. Note down what is coming up. Every participant that you talk to, what's the common thing that they are coming up with? And a pro tip, ensure you ask the same questions to all participants so that you can get an answer almost. You can get variety of answers to the same question. So ensure you have a list of questions to everyone. If you can, record the conversation so that you can pay attention to what users are saying and have follow-up questions. Re-listen to the conversation and start noting down themes that are coming up. What's common, what users are saying that's common or what's outstanding. And then from there, then you can write a report and inform people what you found out from the field. So those are the steps that I can take to analyze qualitative data.
Yeah, I guess that is very tackled. So there is another question here. Okay, it says, how do you carry out UX research when your intended group offers vague feedback?
When I missed the last point, when what?
When your intended group offers vague feedback.
Late feedback.
Vague feedback.
Oh, vague. Oh, okay. Got it. So when you do UX research, mostly we do qualitative, where we are talking to a person face to face. And whenever there's something vague, clarify there and then. What do you mean by this? Can you explain this more? Can you expound on this more? It's only on quantitative research where sometimes people will write feedback that it's vague and you don't really understand what they meant. That's a risk of performing quantitative research, and that's a risk of collecting qualitative data from quantitative methods. Is people will be vague in their responses and you won't really understand what they meant. But if you are doing qualitative research, ensure if something is vague to you, ask for clarification. There's a word that might mean different things to different people, right? So maybe in this example that I've given you, so when people are like Napster is free, and maybe you ask why, what do you mean is free? Why is that something that attracts you to it? And later you find out, oh no, it's what I mean is free is I can actually get specific music that I want, but it's only that the recording labels are not giving me that option. So if it's in short, if it's qualitative research and somebody gives you a vague answer, clarify because you are with them face to face and you're having a conversation. If it's quantitative, it's really hard to clarify if it's vague unless you do a follow-up questions when you reach out to them and say, hey, do you have some minutes to talk to you because you provided some answers that I need a deep understanding of what they mean. I hope that makes sense. So when you're doing quantitative research, make sure you just collect numbers. Like people can just choose and you can analyze numbers. That will be a great use of quantitative. If you're doing qualitative, confirm, ask people what they mean, go deep and to ensure that your understanding and their understanding is the same.
Yeah, fantastic. So there is another question here. Is this the end of the course? No, for those that are asking if this is the end of the course, no. We shall be having another session next week and the other session next week. Yeah, you'll be receiving communication via your emails. So, and there is another question from Timothy who is asking, you have mentioned that UX research is a continuous process. Does that mean you need to work in sprints of the different problems you are trying to tackle? Or is it just a big problem you have to try to figure it day in, day out?
Yeah, so continuous, what I mean, so two things I can answer that. So continuous, it means sometimes when people launch a product, th that's it. They don't they don't do follow up with their users. Um, oh, I thought it was charging. Sorry. Yeah, so they don't do follow up with their users. So they launch a product and then they sit back and relax. So when I say it's continuous, is when it's launched, it doesn't mean it ends there. It means ask people, look at how people are using it. Ask people, what can we improve? Because in today's world, technology is moving quickly and users have a lot of options to choose from. So they might like your product at first, but a competitor might come and offer something that's more robust than your solution, and users really move, right? So by saying continuous is after a product is launched, don't sit back. Continue with user research to understand how people are using it and how you can even make the product better. The second part of this answer is if you're given something big, um, please understand what the priorities are. Uh, there is like must do and good to do, or must have or good to have. So the must have is what's what's the core thing that we can solve? What should we start with? Everything has a starting point. And the reason I say this is you might get into this ocean, like you have a lot to do, only to find out that the core thing that you should do, where should you start, is a very small thing. So whenever you are presented with a big problem, you should ask yourself, where should I start? What's the core thing that I should start with? And then other things will build on top of that. So you will see, for example, in the example I've given, Apple started with the iPod. Even the time they were designing iPod, iTunes was not, like, selling music was not something on their head. But when this problem came, then they were like, okay, let's sell music. And then afterwards, they're like, okay, let's redesign the iPod because we have seen how people are using the iPod, right? So continuous means don't stop. The moment you stop, just know the competitor will overtake you. A good example is Microsoft. When you look at the Windows OS platform, it keeps changing over and over again. And the reason for that is because of UX researchers keep talking to people and gathering, what can we do better? What are we missing? What has changed in your life that the software should adopt to? We do this continuously. And that's why you see different versions of Windows, almost like after 2 years or 3 years, but the versions of Windows keep evolving. If you use other products like Outlook, you will, or Word, let's say Word, or PowerPoint, or the Office suite, you will see that it changes. It changes. It gets a redesign. Things have been moved from this place to this place. A new feature has been added. And the reason Microsoft does that is because we, as user researchers, constantly talk to users, and users constantly tell us what they want to see. And we tell the product teams that make these changes. Does that make sense? So that's what I mean. It doesn't stop. User research keeps on evolving to keep up with the pace of the customers.
Yeah. Okay, so there is another final question here. What is the best advice you can give to someone who wants to transition to UX research without an IT background? What steps can he or she take?
Yeah, so one, you don't need an IT background for UX research, to be honest. I have my colleagues, some of my colleagues did not do computer science. I did, but you don't need. One, the best advice I can give you is um, two things. Two things, yeah. One, user research is about people. So you need to look inside and look like, is your personality, are you able to talk to people, converse to people? Are you a people person? Because you will talk, it involves talking to a lot of strangers or people you have not met before. And I understand to some people that's really hard. And to some people that occurs naturally or easily. So first look inside. So look inside and see, yeah, am I comfortable talking to strangers? Am I comfortable talking to people I don't know, asking them sometimes sensitive information about their lives? Um, Second thing is, this is huge pro tip. Have the passion, to really understand the problem. So the advice I'd give you there is, whenever you're talking to people, because that's what we do as user researchers, we just talk to people, we tell product teams what people think, and then we help product teams to come up with ideas. If I can summarize user research, that's what we do. Talk to people, summarize what they are saying, and work with product teams to come up with good ideas. So in that process, you don't need a technical background. Talking to people is more of psychology and understanding how to converse and more about your personality. Writing reports is more about how do you craft your language. So you need to be good at writing. You need to convince people that this is a big thing. So you can see from my presentation that you need to understand that art of storytelling. You need to carry people through whenever you are telling a story. So you need to understand that craft. How do you portray a very complex thing in a simple way that people can understand? And then third one is coming up with ideas, and you have understood the problem. Now you're coming up with a solution. So my advice to you, my key advice to you is understand those three things really well. How you talk to people, or talking to people, understanding psychology of how people think, how people act. That's important. Second, understand the act of storytelling and the act of writing good reports that people can read and get convinced, and be articulate with your words and what you want to communicate to the other team. So they were not there when you're performing research, so you need to bring them with you along the journey. And third, but this one is not core, but it's a very good to have this way of generating ideas. Now we understand the problem. What is the solution? So maybe you work with design team, data team, product team, and you're kind of brainstorming to come up with a solution. I can say if you master those three, you're good to go in the UX research field.
Okay, so there is another question. Okay, is there any preferable number for the participant for the user research?
Yes. Now, the magic number, and this is qualitative research to be specific, the magic number is between 5 and 8. And the reason for this is, if you recruit really, really well, the first person will tell you fantastic insights, something that's good to you. The second person will say something that's new to you. By the time you reach the fifth person, they'll start repeating what the first person said. And that is what we call in UX research saturation point, where you're not learning anything. So by the time you reach the eighth person, they are telling you exactly what the seventh to the first person told you. So it doesn't matter if you talk to 30 people, they will tell you the same thing. So 8 is the magic number. But for you to reach 8, you really need to recruit well. So for example, if I can go back here, Just a minute. It's here. When you're recruiting participants, in our case, this guy recruited people who are young, tech savvy, and had iPods. Those are the only people they talk to. They were very, very specific who they want to talk to. But if they say like anyone owning an iPod, that's a wide pool of people. Or anyone who is young, that's a wide pool of people. So you need to kind of define your participants, narrow them down to who do you want to start with. Remember, the keyword here is start. You might start with a group of participants, you find out that they are not the right participants. That's okay. You can move on to who do you think are the right participants. So it's 5 to 8, but you need to recruit really well. They need to have the same characteristic or the same baseline of behaviors for you to reach that saturation point after eight people. I hope that makes sense.
Okay, so someone asked here, how do you eliminate your own bias disguised as experience?
Yeah, that's hard. To be honest, that's really hard. But everyone has got bias. Let's start from there. But the key advice is fall in love with the problem, not the solution. People love their solutions so much that they navigate or they influence people to answer certain questions the certain way. So fall in love with the problem. That's the key I can tell you. And you might find out that the solution you're offering is not solving a problem. So as a UX researcher, your core thing is to understand the problem. So fall in love with the problem. If somebody comes up with something that you did not know before, then don't feel bad or don't tell the person that they don't know what they're doing, or don't try to hide feedback from users because it goes against the solutions that you have. So bias will be there, but I can say to reduce the biasness, you cannot eliminate it completely, but to reduce the biasness, ensure that you're in love with the problem. And that will help you tremendously when coming up with a solution. Yeah, sorry, I really need to go. But this has been fun. I hope you have learned something new. For those thinking of coming to UX Research, you're more than welcome to join us. But thanks for showing interest. Thanks for coming out and dedicating your time. So thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Kenny, so much for such a wonderful session. Yeah, hope to see you soon in the next session. So for the attendees, thank you for showing up and making it to attend this session. Yeah, we shall have another session the coming week, that is on 16, on the user experience design process. Yeah, hope you don't miss out. I will be sharing out the recording and also the link to the coming meeting also. Yeah, thank you so much. In case of any inquiry, you can reach out.